coronavirus issue, what's going to happen over the next couple of months, it has been bad nationwide, worldwide in the past couple of months when it's come to the coronavirus. It's spiked. Our cases have spiked to the worst they've been since the beginning of the coronavirus. Experts are saying that it's going to continue to rise through the end of November into December, and then should start coming down a little bit starting in January, February of next year. So during January, whenever he takes his oath of office, he's going to be coming off of what potentially is probably going to be the worst death toll rate in the nation when it comes to the coronavirus. And we already have states already mandating that they're not going to shut down again. We have states like New York who have already implemented what is similar to the shutdown they had at the beginning of this process. And states are kind of taking it here and there. Florida and Texas have already said we're not shutting down the economy. It's going to remain open. So he's going to have to take a look at what's going on in the nation. I know he's going to make a national mask mandate that's going to come out, and then how the states individually respond to that is going to be interesting to see. I already know that there's going to be fight back from Florida, Texas, potentially some other southern states who say no, we're not going to shut down. They're going to file a lawsuit against the United States government saying they're overstepping their constitutional right to do so, and then it's going to go back and forth. I don't know if Biden is going to offer some sort of credit for the states that do enforce it. I don't know whether that's going to be like a tax credit or if it's going to be, if you want federal funds for this, you need to do this. I'm not sure how he's going to handle that in order to get the states to get all on board. But when we look at that from an actionable level, it's going to be tough. He's going to have a lot of roadblocks to come over to make sure that, every state gets on board and actually enforces that mask mandate. But it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad for the next couple of months, looking into the first of the year. And then at the first of the year, we'll have to look back and reevaluate where we're at when it comes to cases and deaths. But right now, we are on a skyrocket to the sky when it comes to cases right now. It is getting bad.
It's bad, man. We have lost 50,000 people since mid-September, and people have hopes that Joe Biden is going to do better because he's going to have the mask mandate. I highly doubt that he's going to order shutdowns. If anything, he will do the partial crap that we have seen all over the states that we know doesn't work. We know that closing at 11 p.m. is not going to make a difference. The virus is going to strike regardless. Closing, unless you serve food, is not going to stop the virus. So I think he's going to give us the partial stuff. And Biden is not going to make that huge of a difference. I wish I could give people more hope, but he really isn't. Unless he's prepared to deal with it the way that Eastern countries have done it, it's going to be the same. We're still going to lose people. Cases are still going to rise, and we're just not going to happen. And I ran into this really good article that compared how the East has dealt with it, and Western culture and politics have influenced tremendously the outcome of the pandemic. You look at South Korea, 51 million people, and they only had 600 deaths related to COVID. Europe, on the other hand, has 740 million people, and they've had 260,000 deaths. If they did it the same way as Korea, they would have had 8,700 deaths. The US, 330 million people. We are at 250,000 deaths. If they did it the way that South Korea did, we would have 4,000 deaths. The UK, 67 million people. They've had 51,000 deaths. If they did it like South Korea, 780 deaths. So it's just incredible how many more deaths the West has had than the East because of culture and politics. And those countries, they were quick to completely shut down to get the virus to zero. Not like here, they said flatline, let cases stay flat for a little bit, and then we open up again. because that's why we see those spikes, but the curve overall keeps going up. In Eastern countries, Vietnam, South Korea, New Zealand, they flattened to zero. They had full shutdowns. They focused on testing. They focused on giving people relief, and they truly made an impact on the virus. And what's crazy is they have a lot less resources. South Korea has a GDP of 30,000. The US has a GDP of 62,000. So the way that we have dealt with it has been wrong from the beginning. I remember you and me, when we were still going to work, saying this is going to be a disaster because we're not China. We're not going to have the full shutdowns. People are not going to want to do that. And it's part of our culture. Our culture determines that. But you go to Japan and see how people really respect each other and have different beliefs. And their deaths are tremendously different from what we see everywhere else in the world. So that article basically brings it to 98% of COVID-19 deaths in the West.
It's the don't tread on me culture. Don't tread on me culture. You can't tell me what to do. You can't tell me to stay at home. You can't tell me to do this. You can't tell me to do that. I mean, we saw it even during the summer. I mean, when the cases were, should have been going down, instead we had record number of people going on vacation, going to populated campsites, going to hotels, traveling. They're like, oh, I'm not going to change my plans. I mean, no virus is going to make me change my plans. And then we look at the death rate and we go, President Trump's fault. To be perfectly honest with you, it's the American people's fault.
It is.
The American you can't blame Trump for it. And Americans have refused to take responsibility for their own health, putting not only themselves at risk, but everybody else around them by refusing to wear masks, refusing to do this, refusing to do that. And, it doesn't help that there's a large number of people who, are COVID deniers and say this doesn't exist. This is made up. There is no, this is just another ploy of the government to control us. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Not the dumbest. I'm sorry. I've heard dumber. But I mean, that mentality is out there too. And if you're already one of those people that's like, oh, I don't want this, let this impact my life, you're going to latch onto that because that supports your viewpoint. You're going to latch onto that. Oh, this is made up. This doesn't need to happen. You're going to latch onto that because it supports what you want to do. And then really the only time that you see these people change their mind is when there's an immediate impact to them.
Yep.
Like a family member that they have gets sick, or God forbid somebody passes away in their family, a friend or family member passes away, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, I got to wear a mask and stay home. And at the end of the day, that's the shock that some people are going to need in order to take this seriously, is a death of a family member or friend, or a sickness of a family member or friend. And you don't have to look far to see it. People are getting it all over the place. I have people who I went to high school with who are on ventilators because of it, who are now on oxygen because of it, can barely walk, are a long ways from recovery. And this is a serious, serious, serious virus that impacts people so differently. And I think that also feeds into it too, is, I knew somebody who had it and he had a cough for a week.
And then they feel better.
Well, that may be the case, but I can tell you, I have people who are my age who ended up having to be on a ventilator and now have oxygen like they're 90 years old and who can barely walk 10 feet without needing to sit down. So, yes, it does impact people differently. Mm-hmm. But the problem is you can be a carrier, not be impacted that badly, and give it to somebody who it will impact badly because you don't want to wear a mask. And you don't want to not have a gathering, and you don't want to not meet with your family members, and you don't, and all this other stuff. You don't want your life to be even partially impacted by this COVID-19 pandemic. It's terrible. Horrible, be safe.
Man. And hey, you want to know who was, or maybe still is, one of those COVID deniers?
Who?
You ready? Ronald Klain, Biden's chief of staff that he picked. Big lobbyist for many different reasons, but at the beginning of this, he was tweeting, we don't have a COVID epidemic in the US, but we are starting to see a fear of an epidemic. Kudos to the mayors who are standing against that. So he was one of those people saying, oh, this is not bad. This is not going to be bad. This is just a cold, or there's no epidemic. And
You're right. It's not an epidemic. It's a pandemic.
Yeah.
You're right. It's not an epidemic. It's a pandemic. So good. We have a chief of staff who doesn't believe in COVID. That's
and the tweet is public. You can go look it up.
perfection.
I'm not making it up. You can go to his Twitter. Again, Ronald Klain. He is Biden's chief of staff.